asking what are the ages of your kids. Some say all the way as young as 3 years old. And I think the oldest I saw was like 18 or 19 years old. So the second question I'd like to follow up, and I hope you guys will respond so I can cater tonight's session to parents of these age groups, right? Is what are your concerns for your children as a parent? So just take a bit of time to write down some of your concerns for your children. So whether they are, okay, I see number one already. Ling Hui says screen time. I'll address this tonight. Settling into Sec 1. Tonight we'll focus a lot on the P6s transitioning into secondary school, but I also will be sharing about the teenage issues that a lot of secondary school students are facing that maybe parents don't know about. So I'm going to be spilling some tea. In the teens lingo, spilling tea is I'll share a lot of things that like maybe they don't want you to know, insights and things like this. Thank you. I see a lot of screen time, self-discipline, self-esteem, bullying, relationship, BGR, choice of friends, self-harming and all these things. Okay, perfect. Because all these things that you're typing in the chat right now are things that I'll be talking about. And I like to start off by putting out a disclaimer, because just now some parents were texting and asking, can I put my child in front of this screen to attend this webinar? Parents, it's completely up to you, but I will advise against it. And the reason why is today's session is for the parents. I'm going to go quite deep and quite intense into some of the issues that the teenagers are facing, and it could be quite sensitive. So if your child is not too mature yet, it may not be appropriate for them, okay? Because I'll be speaking to the adults about the teenagers, because some of the things that you're bringing up, like bullying, unmotivated, depression and things like that, I'm going to deep dive into some of these things. So if you guys are ready, just type ready while I switch screens back to my slides. Thank you for being so responsive, okay? Like, because I know it's going to be a one-way communication, but the only way that I can really communicate with you, I'll see through the chat. Thank you, Janice. Thank you, Summer. Thank you, Havinda, Sheena, and Lena. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to start off with is by sharing with you that over the last many years that I've been working with teenagers, as well as supporting the parents, what are some of their top concerns that you've already raised up, but generally across the board for parents of different children with different age groups or even different generations, what are some of the things that they might worry about or some of the challenges that they might face? So here are the top four, and it's not exclusive, but the first one is that parents generally are concerned whether their child will do well in school as a student, but also as they continue to transition into secondary school, into tertiary education, university, and then start working, right? Will they be doing well in their life? And ultimately, will they be happy? So parents, if your number one concern as a parent for your child is, will my child grow up to be okay? Will my child grow up to be happy? Can you type happy in the chat if you are a parent that wants a happy child to do well in life? But of course, the definition of doing well, right, differs for all parents, okay? Why one parent type sad? Benjamin, I'm sure, Benjamin, you are a kid, okay? I'm sure no parent will write that I want my child to be sad. So once again, if you're a child right now, right, this webinar is not for you, okay? I say again, it's only for parents. So thank you, most parents who type this. But you know the keyword there, well, right? Because while talking to a lot of the students, sometimes their definition of well is their parents' definition. Because parents sometimes set certain expectations on their child. I want you to do well for your PSLE. And that means well is ALX number. And they are like, wow, this is what my parents want. But this is not exactly what I want. So sometimes their emotional well-being, their mental well-being is sort of shaped and affected by, I don't know what I want. It's always what my parents want. So that's the first thing that parents are concerned about. But children are also going through the issue. That's why maybe one person who wrote sad, that might be a child. The second thing is a lot of parents are concerned that, hey, my child right now maybe not so good in terms of their self-esteem. They don't seem very confident. They're quite introverted. They don't seem to have this sense of conviction or direction in what they want to do, what they have to do, and always nagging at them. Any parent, you are very concerned about this. This is like to you, like, oh, I face this stress, I face this challenge every single day. Yes. If your child is, okay, I saw all the yeses are coming through from Serene, Fiza, Rona, Farah, spot on from Serene. Okay, I want to share one thing, looking down further into your child's journey. And this is really crucial and this is really important because right now, if your child is still in primary school, there is still a lot of time. There is still a lot of hope to build a strong foundation, which I'm going to share some tips tonight and some strategies that you can work with with your child. But more importantly, also, why I say there's a lot of time and there's a lot of hope is if you change certain mindsets, certain behavioral patterns, if you instill certain habits in your child right now, things may change for the better. However, the same can also be said if your child right now is displaying a certain behavior or certain pattern and they don't fix this because they're not aware of it and they're not taking the right actions to change it, what happens is maybe 5 years down the road, your 12-year-old graduates from secondary school, goes into JC and Poly at 17. 5 years later, they go into the workforce after graduating from university. And then everything compounds because they were a quiet kid in primary school. They didn't learn how to speak up when they have to. They were quite aimless in primary school. They didn't learn to find a sense of purpose or direction. What do you think might happen when they enter the workforce? And I've seen this happen to a lot of youths. They become very lost. They become very unmotivated. They spiral down. And there is a trend amongst the youths these days where they are very detached from reality because they don't know how to cope with certain situations, especially because 4 years ago, we went through 2 years of COVID, and it has affected the generation of children growing up in the COVID era. In fact, I'll give you a case study, quite a few case studies tonight, right, to show you the realities of how it has affected some of the youths and how it continues to affect the youths as well as parents, especially if you're a parent of tweens these days. Because if your child is Sec 2 and below, they are no longer Gen Zs. If your child is Sec 3, they belong in the last group of Gen Zs. If your child is Sec 2 and below, they are now part of the Gen Alpha. Today, I'll focus a lot on the Gen Alpha. So the third one, parents concerned about academics and their social ability, their social skills. When they transition into secondary school, there are going to be a lot more influences because here's the reality. Primary 6, they are the kings and queens of the school. Why? Because they're the oldest in the school, the most senior one. But when they transition into secondary school, they will be Sec 1. There'll be Sec 2, Sec 3, Sec 4, and there'll be a lot of influences, not just online, but with all these like Sec 2s or upper secondary who might befriend them for good intentions or maybe intentions that you may worry about. So how can we actually help them to cope in this transition academically, personally, and socially? And finally, can I ask parents, because some parents, you might be very blessed or you might be very stressed with this last point, is at this age that your child is at right now, do they still listen to you? Can you just type yes or no? Okay, if you write yes, you're very blessed, okay? Because your child still listens to you. But the challenge is, will they continue listening to you when they become teenagers? You're going to face a lot more challenges when that happens. Occasionally, Gloria, yes and no. So some of you really depends on the mood, right? Like one of you said, Chong Si says depends on the mood. So I'm going to be talking about these 4 points mainly, and also focusing on 3 gaps that students, tweens, teenagers, and even parents, whether you're an educator, whether you're an adult, whether you're a sibling, whether you're a parent, how can we fill these gaps, right? Or close these gaps that you might be facing and your children might be facing as well. Because first one, tonight I'm going to be talking about the relationship gaps that is not just like BGR issues. It's also how parents are sometimes losing touch. They feel this distance, they feel this gap with their children, and you start to worry. It's like, hey, my daughter no longer listens to me. My son seems to spend so much time on his phone with his friends. There's like a disconnect from reality, these kind of things. So we're going to talk about that, a relationship gap. The second thing is the learning gap, because they're going to take on a lot more workload. Right now, primary school, P6, they take 4 subjects or even 5 subjects if they take higher mother tongue, but they're going to face an increase in subjects that they have to study for. It's like 9 subjects, 10 subjects that they're going to study for. Are they able to cope? Are they able to manage? Tonight, I'll share one technique for parents who sometimes feel that my child doesn't know how to manage their time. I'll share with you one technique that you can actually go through with them during the holidays so that they can be more productive, more effective, and more efficient as well. Okay. And then the third one, we're going to talk about their emotional and mental well-being, because I'm going to be sharing a lot of case studies, a lot of insights, a lot of things that are happening that are really serious and really sensitive. It's one of the reasons why I'm doing this webinar tonight. We've been doing this webinar over the last 2 weeks, and a lot of parents have been coming in. And if you know some of these issues, it's great. But if some of the things that I share tonight, you are not aware, That's the whole purpose of this webinar. But at the same time, some parents, I'll say this as candidly as possible, are sometimes in denial because sometimes when you go for a parent-teacher meeting, for example, and the teacher says something about your child, and some parents may be like, no, my child is not like this. But sometimes, do you really know what your child is going through? Do they actually tell you? Or is there already a barrier? Is there already a gap? So these are the few things that I'm going to go through and focus on. But before I go into all these things that I'm sure some of you are excited or curious to know more about, I'll share a little backstory of my own relationship with my mom. And for me, I grew up as a Singaporean kid going through the Singapore education system. However, my mom is not Singaporean. Actually, I want to ask, can you guys guess, right? I've not done this in the last two webinars. Can you guess which country my mom is from? She's a tiger mom. She's like, oh, all of you know her. Okay, she's not from China, but majority of you guess, maybe you like K-dramas, right? My mom is from Korea, and you might think it's so cool, it's so cute, you grew up as a Korean baby, but I hated my childhood. I hated my, like, all the way to my primary six, right? I hated my life. And the reason why was because my mom, she's Korean, and if you think Singapore's education system is stressful, wait till you, like, go to Korea and see the reality of it. Because from a really young age, you are expected to not just get A's on your tests or exams. Because to Korean mothers, right, A equals average. Can you guess what's the standard that Korean mothers live by? What must you achieve? What must you do in school? Can any of you guess? APT. Damien, I think you're a kid. Okay, so again, our parents, I say, I'm not going to the sensitive stuff yet, but if your kid is in front of the camera, please do not put them in front of it, okay? Yes, so SK says, not just topping in class, you have to top the whole cohort, you have to be the best in school. And the second thing that my Korean mom likes to do, right, is to compare. She always compares me with my sister, who did really well in her primary school. She was in Raffles Girls Primary School, and then she did all the way to university, was always one of the top in her cohort, and likes to compare with the cousins, likes to compare with the neighbors, likes to compare with her other Korean friends. So that's the Korean culture, and I really hated it because it was constantly like this pressure and stress that I had to live up to my mom's expectations, and I never did. Because when I got my PSLE results, she wanted me to go to ACSI, but I was not as smart as she hoped, and I didn't make it to that school, and I ended up in a neighborhood school. And my mom, right, that very moment, right, was like, you know what? In some way, some form, she sort of implied like she gives up on me. And that was one of the turning points of my life, tweens to teen, P6 going to secondary school, because there were certain things that I had to learn the hard way. There were certain things, thankfully, that happened or didn't happen that made me go on a trajectory that say like, hey, you know what? Even if my results in PSLE was not what my mom hoped for, even if I went to secondary school, that is like people classify that as like neighborhood secondary school, you cannot make it in life. I managed to prove my mom wrong because when I went to poly and university to study mass communication, while I was still studying as a student, I was already achieving certain things in the media industry that I was previously involved in. And I told my mom like, hey, you know, sometimes results, sometimes judgments in like primary six, right, is not like definitive of a person's trajectory in life. So this is one of the reasons why I do what I do. And at some point, I left the media industry and I pivoted to the education scene. And in the education space, I was like, first of all, starting with primary school kids. And this was one of the moments with one of the P3 kid, right, at that time that made me feel like, hey, you know what? There is so much that we can do. There's so much that we can guide and support the next generation of kids because they're going through a different sort of challenge. It's a new generation that is now experiencing new challenges. For example, we grew up without technology. We grew up without AI. And the kids these days, they're even exposed to all these things at a much younger age, and they might even be more versed with all these technology and AI that we as adults may not even be familiar with. So the question is, as the world is changing, how can we continue to support all these like tweens and teenagers? So one of the things I want to start off with, right, is showing you that how we as adults, for parents over here, when we were in primary school and we were in secondary school, once upon a time, we were teenagers, how was it like then versus how it's like right now? Because when you saw the video at the start, like I was struggling with a P6 question, right? Literally my team, they like, hey, why don't you attempt this math question? And I was like, Oh my gosh, like when I was in primary school, this was not the kind of math problem that we had to solve. Because back then, our form of learning was like a lot of facts, a lot of memorization. But the students these days, even in primary school, they are taught to think critically. They even challenged, right, to think out of the box. And the one thing that's very, very different for like teenagers these days is like once upon a time, when we were teens, if our teachers threaten to call our parents, right, like we will get scared. We will beg the teacher, can you please not call my parents? Because for me, when I was like threatened, like the teacher will threaten to call my parents, I was like, please don't call my parents because if you call my mom, I go home, I will die, like 100% die. My mom will cane me, you throw me off the house, these kind of things. However, right now, even at the primary school level, the students rule the class. Because if let's say I'm a teacher and I say to one of the students like, hey, I'm going to call your parents to tell them about this issue. Your child may give attitude and they might say like, call off, I don't care. You call my parents, they're going to scold you, they're going to report you, you're going to get sacked from your job. And some of them, right, actually have that audacity, right, to like challenge or talk back. And like these are some of the challenges that even educators and teachers in school might be facing because now students rule the classroom. And some secondary school, it gets a lot more challenging. The third thing is we used to be very passive learners. We used to sit in class, just listen to the teacher. But right now, there's a lot more that students are actively involved in their learning, and it's more research-driven with a lot of collaboration versus just taking tests, exams, and competition. So these are the changes that are happening, right? And I just want to ask at this point for parents over here, do you struggle with some of these changes? Do you think it's a good change? Do you struggle with it? Do you not like understand it yet? Let me go to the chat to see. I feel sad for my kids when they feel like a failure, when they come back and say they hate math. Okay, so even at P3, right? So that's the thing I'm going to be talking about in just a while's time, because even at P3, if they already have this mindset, or if they feel like, hey, I dislike a certain subject, I dislike school, and sometimes if we don't address it, because we don't know why they think that way, why they feel that way, it's just going to continue to grow and become a bigger problem as they go into teenhood. Not a good change. Okay, I think one thing that parents might agree with, the biggest change that you see happening in our education system right now is your kids are given their PLDs. And in secondary school especially, this is becoming a big problem for most parents because it's like, oh, my kids are always giving excuse that they have to do homework, projects, group meetings on their PLD. But you know for a fact that like they might be doing their homework and research, but they toggle very fast between their games and their chats and these kind of things, right? So all these things, realities that are happening, and for your kids who are still in primary school, ladies and gentlemen, moms and dads over here, this is your Gen Alphas. Because for the Generation Alpha, they're going through a whole different sort of challenges. And first thing that we have to acknowledge is they are what is known as the digital native generation. Because kids these days, they grew up with this device. You can go to any malls, any restaurants, and maybe some parents here, you may have been guilty of it, right? And what you see is sometimes parents, they will like put their phones and entertain their kids with their device because they are exhausted, they're stressed, they are busy with their work and all that, and they just want their kids to like be entertained and put their device in front of their kids. But what happens is because your kids have grown up in this kind of condition, right? They are now known as the digital native generation. And what this means is they are growing up with technology. They're growing up much faster. They're exposed to things a lot younger. And because they're so exposed to all these things that sometimes we cannot control, it shapes them a certain way. So I'll give you a funny example first. Some of your children may even speak with an accent. So once when I was like training this group of kids, right? And they were from a local school, they were not from like international school or anything. And they all spoke with like an American accent. And some of them even had like British accent. And at first I was so confused. I was like, why do you guys speak with an accent? Are you trying to be cool or what? Because last time if you speak with an accent, you're like very fake and all that, right? So I was trying to find out like, why do they have an accent? And yeah, some of you already, Janice said, right? Because they watch YouTube, you're 100% spot on. Because they grew up watching things like Peppa Pig and they developed this natural British accent, right? Being influenced by whatever content that they watch. So this is how technology sometimes is shaping their identity their behavior, even their mindsets. And as children, sometimes if they are exposed to too many things, and sometimes it may shape them a certain way. And I'll show you a meme right now. This is a funny meme, but there's a deeper implication to this meme that shows the difference of like a 14-year-old or 12-year-old when we were like that versus like your tweens right now. So if you see this meme over here, you can see that we once upon a time, right, we look very like like very, very kiddish at 12 years old or 14 years old. I remember when I was in primary school, P6, right, I was still like catching spider in the school field and these kind of things. But these days, the girls, they're dressing up, they're even putting on makeup at 12 years old. Would you believe, parents? Okay, I'm going to share the first shocking thing that some of you may know, may be concerned about, or maybe in denial. Your P2, primary 2 student only, could be swearing, cursing and swearing, and not like stupid is a bad word. They're saying things that are way worse than the word stupid. Primary 2. At primary 4, if they tell you they have a boyfriend or girlfriend, it's not the innocent kind of like, oh, I have a crush on this boy, I have a crush on this girl, but they are actually, right, exploring what relationship means, exploring what the definition of love means to them. So that's at primary 4. And even at primary 6 level, right, they're exposed to certain sexualized content sometimes. And this is worrying because later I'll show you super sensitive information where sometimes they start to explore that in secondary school. They start to do certain things because they don't want to be left out. They want to be part of the cool crowd and all that. And this is all happening even at a primary school level. We're not even talking about secondary school yet, but because they're so exposed to technology at such a young age, it's shaping their identity. It's setting certain trends that is going down to a much younger age. So as parents, is this something that is concerning? Whether you're educator, whether you're adult, right? We are facing these challenges with the younger generation. I'm going to show you some of the trends right now. I think if you're a child seated in front of the screen, you might know some of these slangs. But let me ask the parents over here, okay? So Gen Alpha slangs and trends. The guy in these headphones. Any of you parents, you know who this guy is? He was recently in Singapore and he caused like a stampede and all that. Like literally people were zombies chasing after him. So Sharon says, speed, I show speed. Rona, you're correct. This is I show speed. He is a YouTube personality. He's a streamer. Can you, or do you know his age? How young this gentleman actually is? He's still a teenager, yes. Correct. Ling Fong is right. He is actually 19 years old. So 2 years ago at 17, he blew up on his streaming platform. And he was very radical. He was very like extravagant and very outlandish, right? With his behavior, with his comments and all that. And the concerning thing is, again, your Gen Alpha kids, what they like to watch is all these influencers, all these streamers, all these YouTubers. Why? It's because like, hey, their friends also watch it. They want to keep up with what's in trend and all that. And sometimes they pick up all these lingo like Riz, mewing, skibidi, and Ohio and all these. And you're like, what exactly do they mean? But these are languages and these are slangs that they now speak. And some of these influencers sometimes, right, could be a funny thing, could be a good thing, but could also be a concerning thing. Because the first thing that is concerning is your kids might sometimes end up being bullied. And the new form of bullying that they are very exposed to is cyberbullying. And I'm going to share a few ways, right, that your child may actually be either the bully unintentionally or intentionally, or perhaps even the victim. Because one of the new ways, or even not so new anymore, that your children are bullying or being bullied is, let's say if all of you right now in this webinar, we're all a class, and I am a kid that gets like outcasted for whatever reasons, like all of you don't like me. So one of the ways that kids do it, right, is they will create like a class group chat. And the first obvious way is they will create a chat group without your child. So let's say if I'm the victim, they discuss everything in a group chat and I'm left out, right? Obviously, like they don't want me in the chat. And as a kid, sometimes if I don't have a phone, or even if I do have a phone and I feel left out, it affects your child. The second way that is also very obvious, but parents, you may or may not know this, is sometimes they do include your child in the chat. It's a classroom chat. All the classmates are inside. But what they do to your child is they make everyone the admin of the chat. And then you'll see one name at the bottom who is not admin, and that is the child that perhaps is being picked on. And that person will feel like, wow, why am I not admin? And these kind of things, right, are actually happening because kids these days, sometimes they have no filter. They just say whatever they want online. And the second thing that parents, you need to be aware of is if you actually monitor sometimes your child's classroom chat, your children are being overly stimulated. And what I mean by this is because if you look at your child's classroom chat and the notification, you could see like hundreds of notifications. And if you actually go into their chat, what you see is all these things. You see like memes, you see like links, you see like trends, you see a lot of nonsense. But to your child, they're like, hey, my friend is messaging me. I need to go and reply my friend. But what this does to them, right, is they're constantly like, hey, I have notification, and they're constantly overstimulated, which is not a good thing. Because like some of you are concerned about, sometimes it leads to like addiction. Sometimes you struggle to like, hey, I need to impose screen time on you. And even if you do, then you take the phone away, right? Then they like challenge you, they fight with you, they scream at you. Any of you parents, you face this? Totally agree. Nazrin says, saw thousands. Yes, correct, right? Scary, right? How sometimes they have like thousands of messages. But parents, there's one thing I want to say, right? If they are still tweens, okay, they're still quite smart, but teenagers especially, they're super smart because even if you know their password or their passcode, if they want to hide things from you, they know how to hide things from you. So it's a constant cat and mouse game that you're going to play with them. So instead of sometimes like preventing or blocking or controlling, right? Tonight, we're going to discuss some of the things, some of the ways, right, that you can really support your children better. Because the important thing we need to take note of at this point in time is if your kids are still in primary school, they are still in the tweens stage of their life, and their decision-making ability, their impulsive control, their sense of judgment, they're still developing all these things. And as parents, you play a very, very important role in shaping these qualities, these values in them. Because sometimes parents, they leave it to the school. They say teachers are responsible for instilling all these values and building up my child. But parents, you are their number one teacher. You are their biggest influence apart from all these influences. So what can you still do at this age, right, to actually help them, to support them before it becomes too late? Because once they go into secondary school, you no longer become priority sometimes. You no longer become the person of influence or authority. What they prioritize will be their friends. What takes control of their life sometimes will be the impressions or connections they want to have online. And sometimes, if you don't address this early, I'm going to show you the first sensitive case study. For some of the case studies that I'm going to show you, right, I've omitted all the sensitive information, but I want to show you in full context because I think it's important for parents to realize what is happening because you may face this or already be facing this. So there's this one mom. She is a profile that some of you may be able to identify with. She struggled with this issue of her child seems to be very addicted to the phone, addicted to games all the time, to the point where she has totally lost control of him. And let me just show you the message first, and I'll go into it. So maybe I'll give a minute for you guys to just read through and I'll summarize it. So as you can see over here, right, to summarize this, the mom, she got so frustrated with her child at one point that she actually threw his phone and even took his school bag, threw it out at the void deck area. And how the child responded, this boy in Sec 3 by that time, he took a penknife and he tried to slash his mom from a distance. And this is something that sometimes kids these days, when they play certain games and the lines get blurred between virtual and reality, and even there was once this incident, I'm sure parents are aware of this and remember this, River Valley, where one of the boy got so triggered that maybe in the heat of the moment, right, he committed an act that like altered his whole life. So how can we like address some of these points? Because it's inevitable. Your kids are the digital native generation. They grew up with devices. Even if you're controlling at this point in time, the screen time, when you actually want to expose them to devices, at some point in their life, they are going to have devices, they are going to be influenced with devices, but it's like not prevention, not like I say you cannot do it, I control you, but how can we build the connection with them? How can we build the communication with them so that they're more aware and they are much stronger in their values and foundations, right? That even as they transition into teenagers, they come from a very solid base that they know that, hey, regardless of what happens, I know who I am and I know the consequences of certain choices I may or may not make. So at this point, why I'm sharing all these things, right, before we go into the three gaps is because we need to understand what the Generation Alpha are now going through. And sometimes we need to see things from their point of view also. And I'm going to share from the Gen Alpha's point of view right now, from the teens and the tweens' point of view, why they sometimes are so addicted to their device, why they feel like this is my life. If you take it away, I have no life at all. And some of the reasons, in their own words, right, is because it's a form of escapism for them. Some feel that their life is already so stressful, it's already so difficult, it's already so challenging that every time they go on their device, whether it's social media or playing a game, it's a form of escape for them. It's so much easier. And one thing that the Gen Alpha, I'm personally very concerned about this, is they want instant gratification. If they want something, they want it now. Even tests, for example, if they study really hard for it, for example, and they don't get the results that they desire, they instantly come to this conclusion that I cannot do this. I don't like it. I'm not going to excel in this at all. So they have become a generation where they want things now. They want things fast. They want things instant. And this is now becoming a problem because not just their attention span, right? And like what CW says, adults too, like we have become such an impatient generation that we want things immediately. Otherwise, we snap. Otherwise, we react a certain way. The second thing is every time they play their game, they get dopamine hits. And when they get dopamine hits, right, they feel this sense of achievement. They feel this sense of accomplishment. They feel this sense of like, hey, I am somebody. And I'll share a little information, a little insight, parents, that your primary school kids, if they play games on their devices, and this is a very interesting trend because your kid may be a very introverted kid and in class just do their own thing, but he could be very, very well respected by his classmates. Why? Because on his game, his gaming status is like some legendary or high-ranking player. And because he's a high-ranking legendary player in his game, all the rest of his classmates who play the game, you're like, wow, you're so cool. Can you teach me? And this gives your children sometimes, right, this sense of like, wow, I'm somebody respected. My friends look up to me because I have a cool game character, a cool skin, the highest score and things like that. And they feel this sense of like validation and acceptance. Maybe when you grew up, it used to be like, wow, all the smartest, all the most good looking, all the richest kids in school, right? They are the popular ones. But it's changing these days. Even the social acceptance in school, right, is changing. So knowing all these things, why devices are their lifeline, how can we build like a stronger base at a much younger age so that your children, even if they're already exposed to devices, right, you inculcate certain values in them, you build certain strong foundation in them. And as they grow up, they will start to realize certain things and maybe even fulfill their potential. Because I'm going to now show this thing that a few of you may be familiar with Maslow hierarchy of needs, but if we go to this fundamental level of their basic needs, physiological needs, some of the things like their food, their shelter, a bed to sleep in, these are things that all parents, I'm sure in this chat, right, you provide for them. The biggest question at this foundational stage is, do your kids appreciate these things that you provide for them? Or do they actually take it for granted? And I say this in a very serious tone because I've noticed something about teenagers, and it trickles down all the way to their foundational children years, right? Tweens years, is if they are someone that's given something all the time and they don't know how to appreciate it, they don't know how to be grateful for it, even the simple things like their basic needs, they grow up to be very self-centered. They grow up to be very selfish. And I know sometimes as parents, we perhaps grew up in this generation where a lot of things were not given or provided for us. And maybe you want to be the best parent, you want to provide them with all the best resources and all their needs covered. But the thing is, sometimes you might perhaps unintentionally be developing a spoiled child who doesn't know how to appreciate things. So the thing is, yes, we provide them the basic needs, but we also need them to understand that, hey, some of these things, right, we should be grateful. We should express gratitude sometimes. Moving on to the second layer, the second level, some of their safety needs. And the reason why kids act out or behave a certain way sometimes is because in their point of view, they don't feel safe, they don't feel loved, they don't feel that like their presence matter at home. Sometimes kids might even say like, you know what, I feel so much better and I like being in school or with my friends because at home, my parents are quarreling all the time. They're scolding me all the time. They are like fighting with each other all the time. And to them, they don't feel safe. They don't feel this sense of security. And if they lack these basic needs, especially as a child, when they go into their teenage years, they are going to seek all these things online in other places, whether it's through their internet friends or whether it's with an upper secondary boy, upper secondary girl, or even a boyfriend, girlfriend at their age. They will want to feel this sense of like belonging, this sense of love, this sense of inclusion, or even this sense of accomplishment. So only teenagers or even adults, even human beings, this is Maslow hierarchy of needs that applies to all human beings. If we don't have our basic needs and our psychological needs fulfilled, how can we even talk about realizing your child's potential? Because if we don't build a strong base for them to work up towards their potential, some parents are saying things like, you know what, I believe in my child's potential. I want to force certain things, unintentionally or not, to make sure that they become the best. So the thing is, we have to go down to the basic level and ask your child sometimes like, hey, what is it that you want? What is it that you want me to know? So for example, if you're a P6 parent and the results are going to come out in about 2 weeks' time, right? And have you already had a conversation with them like what school they might want to consider? Because if you're like my mom, and my mom was the dictator, I used to call my mom Kim Jong-il, like the North Korean dictator. My mom was like, you are going to go ACSI. Then I'm like, gong gong P6 kid. I'm like, oh, my mom said, and then it's law, cannot argue, cannot fight, just follow. But the decision was out of her control when I didn't meet the cutoff point. And then I was like, I don't even know what school to choose. And then my whole life went a different way, right? So the thing is, sometimes if parents don't establish this when they're young, like me when I was a teenager, then I started to rebel. When I was a teenager, I started to do things against my mom. Whenever she says something, I will do the opposite. Whenever she says, don't do it, I will go and do it. So would you want to face this kind of teenagers as your tweens go into teenagehood? Because moving further into adulthood, if these things are not addressed, if these things are not met, some of your children, you might see certain behaviors maybe already happening. They start to be very withdrawn. And sometimes they might be withdrawn because there are things happening in school. There are things happening in their classroom. There are things happening within your friendship group that you may not be aware of. Some of them, they might grow up with very low self-esteem, and their way of like addressing it is to be a people pleaser all the time because they want to be accepted. They want to be loved. They want to be seen. And some of them, right, they will do certain things just for the sake of attention. And when we go into the crux of the matter and we really try to find out like, why is your child behaving a certain way? Some of the quote unquote more problematic kids, right? Sometimes when I ask them like, hey, why do you choose to behave a certain way or make certain decisions? The answer is they it's a cry of help. It's their way of crying out for their parents' attention and their parents' love. Because they will say like, oh, I don't know, my mom and my dad doesn't seem to care, doesn't seem to have time for me. All they do is like send me for tuition classes. All they do is scold me all the time. And when they act out, it's because they want their parents' attention. So if they don't actually get their parents' attention, or if they don't have their psychological needs met, and they don't feel this sense of love, validation, and acceptance, as they go into their teenage years, they will start to explore and experiment things which gives them that sense of like achievement, fulfillment. And I'm now going to share with you the next case study. This one is super sensitive because this was one of the Sec 1 boy that I once knew. His mom was very distraught when this incident happened. Basically, in a nutshell, I'm going to tell you and then show you, was he had sex with a female classmate at Sec 1. Okay, so I'll show you the context of the message and I'll go deeper into it. So you can see the context of the message, right? I'll summarize it in the interest of time. Is you see the highlighted one is the security guard found this boy and the female classmate in the classroom after school hours. And at first they denied any wrongdoing, but upon investigation, it was found out that they were having sex in the classroom. And it became a very serious matter because it wasn't just the parents involved, it wasn't just the school involved. The principal and the police got involved as well. And it became a huge matter to the point where the boy was expelled. And this is the kind of reality that is happening. And which is why I don't say it as a joke, where even at a primary school level, sometimes, even before they hit puberty, right, they're already exploring all these things. In one of the previous webinar, there was this mom in the chat who even said like, oh, my P3 girl is already flirting with 3 different boys. Like, what do I do about this? So we have to acknowledge, right? And I see one comment, Hafinda says, oh my God, but this is happening. We cannot be in denial. We cannot say like, I'm going to control you. I'm going to take away your phone. But we need to start to acknowledge these realities and start to have these kind of communications, right, with your child so that, again, you build a stronger foundation with them. They know their values very strongly. Even if they want to explore certain things, right, they might know the consequences of your choices and how it might shape their whole life. So how can we actually do that? So the very first part, I'm going to be talking about the relationship gaps. If this is something that you struggle with, talking to your child, how can you foster a stronger relationship? How can you actually talk to your child better so that when they go into their teenage years, it won't be so much of a struggle anymore, okay? So at this point, just to check in on the chat, is everything that I've shared so far useful for you guys? If it's useful, can you just type useful so I know I'm pacing you guys and you guys are actually benefiting from the session? Okay, thank you, Rona. Thank you, Fiza, Sheena, Nancy, Grace, Emily, Linda. Thank you. Oh, like definitely. Thank you. So, well, the chat, how many of you are in this chat right now? There are 300 of you in this. Okay. Thank you for responding. But you see, right, this is exactly like your child's phone, right? When their phone is blowing up because of all the notification. But I do appreciate you guys being responsive and interactive. So thank you. So moving on, the first part, we're going to talk about the relationship gap. And I'm going to be sharing like 4 tips for parents over here that you could take into account or even try it out with your kids to foster a more meaningful and a stronger, closer relationship with your child. Because again, like I said, if they are still primary school, there is still time, there is still a lot of hope, and you still have a lot of control and authority actually, okay? Because once they go into secondary school, teenagers, right, the approach needs to adapt. The approach needs to change. So the first thing I want to share is if you're a P6 parent and your child is going to take their results in the next 2 weeks' time, it's, I would say, sort of a make or break moment in their life and your relationship with them. Because what you say, what you do, how you even react, right, could either build a stronger bridge with your child, or it could burn a bridge and the gap is going to get wider as they go into secondary school. And in the most drastic situation, you could even lose your child in secondary school because one mistake could just change the whole trajectory of their life or even the family relationship, family dynamics. So the first thing, I'm going to share four tips and 4 points. The first one is really as they go into their teenage years, right? As parents, we need to start to ask more of their opinions and also really listen to what they're saying or sometimes even what they're not saying. Because a lot of times as adults, we have a lot more experience, we have a lot more knowledge, we have a lot more sense of what is right, what is wrong. But the biggest mistake that a lot of adults or even parents make sometimes is they impose all these opinions or all these judgment to their child. For example, you say, this is wrong. And your child might ask like, why? And then sometimes you explain or you don't bother to explain. And you give the ultimatum and you say things like, because I say so, so don't do it. And every time you do that, right, it's like my word is law. You just obey, you don't question, you don't ask their opinion, you don't listen to their opinion. What you end up doing is you're going to mold your child to shut you out. Because if they feel that my parents never listen to me, they're not going to tell you things anymore. If they can predict that you're always going to react or say or do things a certain way, they're going to block you out. They're going to shut you out. They're going to start hiding things from you. So how, right, can you actually like build this relationship with them and build this connection with them? And sometimes one of the best ways we can do is to learn from the teens themselves. So I'm going to be playing you a short little clip. I asked some of my youth before because knowing them, knowing their parents, this one particular student of mine, her name is Regina. And in primary school, Regina used to be this student who never really communicate with her mom. Every time her mom, right, talks to her, she give like one word answer, like yes, no, maybe, okay, these kind of things. Any of you parents, your child is like this, like one word child? Can you type like one word? Yes? Yes, okay, I see one word you sometimes, right? So Regina used to be this kind of child. She gives her mom like one word answer. And when she went into secondary school, things changed for the better. And when I asked her, like, what did your mom do to you or with you that made you change to be more responsive? And I'll show you what she said. The statement is like, why are parents losing the youth of today? So far, it's been like, hey, maybe it's ego, but what do you guys think?
I did start off not having a good relationship with my mom. Okay, I wouldn't say we were like fighting or anything, but I always had the issue of saying yes and no to every single question or just nodding my head. But I think that changed in secondary school not because I didn't have any friends, but because I wanted to share more. And also she kept asking, and she always wanted to care, and she never gave up about like pushing me to answer her questions and talking to her, because I think she knew that without that parent-child relationship, not only lonely for me but also lonely for her, because only child, right? And she is a stay-home mother also. So with that relationship, it's also easier for us to bond and to talk. So why are people losing touch with their child? I think it's also lack of effort. I think not really to blame parents also, because no one teaches you to be parents, right? But I do know of friends' parents. Like only recently I found out that there are parents who don't really care. Not saying they don't like want their child to be the best version of themselves or anything, or they don't care about their kids, but like they're not pushing their children to find out more or explore more things, or even wanting to create that relationship. It's a very what I do my own things, then they do their own things kind of thing. But if you really want that parent-child relationship, it's about effort also.
Okay, so this was from the point of view of Regina, right, who's a teenager, and I see some of the comments in the chat saying it's like one word, what, and then sometimes you catch yourself nagging. Yeah, so parents, the thing is sometimes, right, when you nag at your child, it wastes your energy, it wastes your breath and all that, and your child is like a wall, not listening, not responding, or shouting what at you and showing you attitude. So the first thing is sometimes, right, it's to allow them like it's to make the effort regardless. Sometimes if it's challenging, difficult, right, we still have to make the effort, because as parents, if like you give up on your own child, like what's going to happen to your child? So when you heard Regina said, sometimes some parents, as adults, we have responsibilities, we have work stresses, we have certain personal frustrations and all that. And we unconsciously take it out on the children sometimes, because when you come back home and little things trigger you and you snap and you shout at them and things like that, right? And then they start to feel, or they start to predict you a certain way. So the thing is, the first important thing is to take time and take the effort, even if it's difficult. The second thing, and I want to say this as slowly as possible because this is very important. If you're a parent and your child is still listening to you, that is great. If you already feel the distance or the challenge in them listening to you, often, right, we as adults, what we do is we listen to try to correct your child. Because when you ask your child for the opinion, when you ask your child for an answer, as another adult, you're already like preparing your response, preparing your scolding, preparing to give them the right answer. But what's important is not just to listen to correct them. It's important to listen to connect with your child. And you need to give them the time, the space sometimes to express their opinions. So I'll say this again. Often we always listen to the kids to try to correct them. But sometimes what we need to do is we need to listen to them, to connect with them. And one of the ways sometimes is we don't have to be right all the time. I recently learned this because I was speaking to some of my teens who are now 17, 18 years old. They're now in poly. And some of my teens said to me recently, they're like, hey, Matt, we appreciate all the advice you always give us, but sometimes you don't have to be right all the time, or you don't have to tell us all the right things all the time. What we actually appreciate even more, right, is you just be real with us. If you're like stressed, or even if you don't know the answer sometimes, or even if like it frustrates you sometimes, we appreciate it a lot more if you're just real with us, and we can actually understand that, and we actually respect that a lot more. So sometimes, right, parents, we don't have to be right all the time. We can be real a lot more, and we can have this connection, stronger connection with your child. Okay. So next thing, I'm gonna move on, is for parents, sometimes if you say like, oh, when you talk to your child, it's like it makes your blood boil. And then you start to like have World War III or World War IV or World War X, right, with your child all the time. Is this important tip is sometimes you need to give each other, not just your child, you need to give yourself time and space to calm down sometimes, to like reflect, or even give your child a safe space to agree with you or disagree with you. This is what I mean by sometimes we can be real, we cannot have conversations with them. And even simple things, right? Like you saying like, hey, son, daughter, it's okay to make mistakes sometimes. It's okay to fail sometimes because mommy, daddy, we failed before. But how do you feel about it? Do you want to talk about it? And the important thing sometimes is before you impose your advice, you can ask your child like, would you like to hear my opinion? Would you like to hear my advice on it? So it's not you nagging. It's you asking your child for permission to share your suggestion or your advice. Because if your child says, okay, to you asking, can I share my advice or opinion to you? And they say, okay, they are more receptive to listen. But if you say, you know what, I'm going to nag at you, I'm going to tell you everything that's right or wrong about you, they're going to just shut you out. So even simple things like if they disagree with you sometimes, and if you say to them, it's okay to see things differently from me, can you share why you feel this way or why you think this way? And give them time and space to share with you, right? That is where like they will start to build meaningful relationship with you. Second thing is also the tone in which we actually engage them. Because sometimes if we say certain things and they can sense that we're sarcastic, right? Or we don't actually mean it, or we're very harsh with our words and all that, they will still treat you a certain way. So parents sometimes, right, we need to be self-aware also. So it's not just your child. And I'll also say things, I'll say something very controversial right now because there are like maybe 300 parents in this chat, right? After I say this, maybe like some of you will leave this chat. But the controversial thing I'll say is working with so many youths over the years, right? And sometimes parents send their child to me because they have issues with their child or they think their child is problematic. But the fact is, actually, sometimes your children are not the problem. The problem is the parenting style of some adults. Because sometimes moms, dads, some parents, they're not aware of what they're doing, saying, or even shaping their child a certain way, right? That is why they are getting their child to behave a certain way. Because there is this saying in Chinese, my Chinese is quite poor, but there's this saying that sometimes children are a reflection of parents. They mirror after parents. So there's this one sentence though I want to share with everyone that no matter what your child is going through, right? Or no matter what you are going through as well, we need to face our child's challenges with a calm state. Because if you're angry and you take it out on your child sense that they retaliate and they respond in the same anger, right? Then it's not going to be helpful at all. Sometimes we just need to create the space to like, okay, you know what? You know I'm upset. I want you to go and take some time to reflect on it, and we'll come back and we'll talk about it. Don't engage in the heat of the moment because, like you can see over there, children, right, especially if they're much younger age, they learn to regulate their emotions after us. They observe how we're behaving. Like I shared just now, some students, they share, my mom and dad are fighting all the time. My mom and dad are always taking out their anger on me. They sense that and they start to build this wall. They start to predict what you're going to say. They start to tune you out. They start to hide things from you because they know how you're going to react. So we need to sometimes take time, right, to allow them space to think and reflect. Don't engage in the moment when it's heated. Okay. Next one, tip number 3 is to regularly express love, appreciation, and even positive affirmation. And I think this is really, really important because as Asian parents sometimes, and even as tiger moms or tiger dads sometimes, right, we demand a lot or we have high expectations for your children. And Asian way of parenting sometimes is we show tough love, like my mom did. She always say things like, for example, when people praise my sister or me for like being talented or whatever, right? Then my mom would downplay it. My mom like, no lah, my child not very smart one lah, not very talented one. Then if people say negative things, right? People say like, hey, why your child so troublemaker one? Then my mom will say things like, oh, he takes after the dad, that kind of thing. So these kind of negative like reinforcements, right, actually shapes the identity and shapes the mindset of a child. So one of the things that we can do better, and I'll show you a meme again. is we can learn sometimes from the Caucasian parents, because Caucasian parents are known to be very nurturing, very expressive, very loving. And if you actually observe the children sometimes, or even Japanese, I always use Japanese parents as an example, because if you observe Japanese kids, right, they are so respectful, they are so polite. I mean, sometimes they're very suppressed, then they become adults, then they go crazy and things like that. But the thing is, if we are very nurturing and we actually express love, we as human beings, we need to feel love, the Maslow hierarchy of needs. That's the psychological needs. But if Asian parents, we nag at them all the time, we scold them, we focus on their faults all the time, then they start to hate, they start to rebel, they start to feel that they are less than what they're actually worth. Okay, so tip number 3, the very important thing is we actually need to reinforce positive affirmations a lot more. If your child is taking their results, whether P6 or not, because they just completed the exams, right? Some of them, when they get their results, like encourage them more than like put them down. And that is a very, very crucial point, because like I said, it could either make or break your relationship with your child as they move on to the next academic year. Okay. So final one is to really accept them for who they are and not who you want them to be. And a lot of times, parents, they want to break this generational cycle, because maybe you went through a certain upbringing, a certain parenting that you feel was not ideal, and you want to create a new way of parenting, or you want to bring up your child in a different way. But sometimes your children, right, are growing up in a different world, and they might have different aspirations. And what your dreams that you have for them and you try to live vicariously through them may not be what they want. And instead, they might tell you things like, Mom, I want to be a YouTuber. Dad, I want to be an influencer, and things like that. And you will be automatically, you'll be very concerned, right? You'll be like, wow, what kind of career is this? Are you sure you want to do that? But sometimes, right, just let them explore, because all these jobs that they want to do, it may change over time. Or they may themselves come to a realization that, hey, you know what, this is not a good fit for me. Maybe I can explore something else. But if we gatekeep and if we restrict and we impose all the time, right? Don't do this, and things like that, or you protect them all the time, helicopter parenting all the time, then you're not giving them the space to grow. And one thing I want to share with parents on this note is, if your tween is transitioning to a teenage stage, what teenagers crave is autonomy. They want freedom. They want to explore. They want to make choices. And for parents, it's okay. Sometimes, especially when they become teenagers, parents, especially mothers, right, you need to let go a bit. Okay, don't like hold them close and protect them too much. Let them explore a bit. Let them fall. Let them fail. Let them get hurt sometimes. Allow autonomy, but getting them to understand accountability. So if they want freedom, they want autonomy, allow a bit of that, but get them to understand autonomy. Because if they make certain choices, they need to be aware of the consequences. So that's where they learn sometimes. But if you say no all the time, what they grow up to become is someone who cannot make decisions, because mom and dad makes the decision all the time. Okay, so allow them to explore who they want to be sometimes. And instead of controlling all the time, right, is to guide them to understand how they think. Because sometimes in school, they learn like what to think. And in Singapore, sometimes we obey the law, we follow the rules, we're taught like what to think. But as parents, as adults, we need to guide the tweens and teens how to think. Okay, so these are 4 tips that I wanted to share with parents over here in terms of how you can continue to build better relationship with your child. And before we move on to the second part, helicopter parenting is detrimental. Yeah. Is this first part okay so far? Have you guys learned certain things that you can start to experiment or start to explore with your child? I know some of you have certain questions, right? We're going to Q&A at the end. The time now is 9:05, almost 9:10. Okay, at this point, I need to apologize. Okay, there is a chance that we might overrun past 9:30. Can I ask for permission? Is it okay if we exceed 9:30? Some of you might be busy after 9:30. So, okay, thank you. Okay, so I respect your time, and I know time is valuable. So I just wanted to put out, we may exceed 9:30, but I want to make this as useful as possible. Speaking of time though, the next thing we're going to jump into is some of the learning gaps that your child might face. And specifically, I'm going to be talking about managing time, specifically and ironically, because I'm trying to catch up with time now. Okay, but this is the part where your teen right now, if they are P6, when they get their results, they're going to go into secondary school. And one of the biggest challenge they will face is they will say like, I don't have time. And sometimes it is a fact. It is reality because they wake up at like 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. They start school at like 7 a.m. 2 p.m. they have enrichment or they have CCA or remedial. They end at 5 p.m. Some of them have tuition classes to 8 p.m., 9 p.m. They go home, start their homework at like 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Sometimes they don't even get to sleep enough, and then the day repeats itself, right? So how can we actually like help youths to understand that, hey, in their transition, in their struggles, in their challenges that they face, sometimes if they develop certain habits, it could change everything for the better. Because instead of being dependent on emotions, if we build certain habits and if we do it consistently, things will change. So some of the youths I coach, right, they all come from different schools, different backgrounds. They have different challenges, different aspirations. Some of them, they struggle to manage their time. Some of them, they struggle with their self-esteem. Some of them, they struggle with their grades. But when they realize certain things and they are aware that, hey, these are my strengths, these are my weaknesses, these are things that I need to fix, these are things I need to break through and overcome. And once they come to that point and they manage to go past that point, their whole life becomes better. And I'll show you a few examples first. So one of my students, right, she used to be very soft-spoken. In terms of confidence, she was not exactly the most confident person. And she lost a lot of opportunities because of that, because she always felt she was not good enough. There is always someone better. But when she finally realized like, hey, there are strengths of hers and she needs to vocalize it sometimes. She needs to show that when the time and opportunity presents itself. She managed to get herself a scholarship. And another one got nominated to be student council. And you can see what it does to their self-esteem. When they realize certain things, when they achieve certain things, it puts them on the right trajectory. And they want to build on this trajectory. But the same can also be said if they make certain decisions, they don't get certain results in their favor, and they start to develop a mindset or habit that is not useful, that is detrimental, like some of you said, right? So one of the things that why I'm very passionate about coaching youths, right, is because I personally feel that a lot of things that we are not learning enough in school, because school focus a lot on academics, but there are certain life skills, there are certain things that we need to develop, and we only learn all these things as we grow up. Instead of teenhood, we learn it when we become adults, and sometimes it takes a much more painful lesson to learn all these things. So some of the things that we really should instill and shape better in all the children and next generation, right, is the ability to adapt, because it's a constantly changing world. Are they aware? Are they able to adapt? Are they able to collaborate? Are they able to influence rather than influence? Are they able to manage their time, their self, their emotions? And at this point, I'm going to be sharing with you a technique, right, for parents whose child struggles a lot with time management. I'm going to break down one very simple technique that you can start to work with your child over the school holidays, right? Because habit needs to start and it needs to be done consistently before it becomes natural, okay? So if you're a parent that is interested in this, because I'm going to switch screens, right? Just type time, because I'll share with you a time management technique now. Now, I hope will be beneficial for some of you. Okay. Oh, thanks, Kay, Fiona, Sherlyn. Okay, let me share my screen. Is it showing up? Yes, it is. Okay. Okay, so I hope everyone can see the screen over here. And what I'm going to now share with you is a way that if your child is someone that says to you like, hey, I'm not able to focus, I'm not able to build the momentum, I'm not able to remember everything that I learn. Every time I go tuition, every time I do my homework, I cannot focus, I cannot remember, right? This is a technique that you can instantly start to apply or do together with your child to increase their retention, their focus, and also, right, their sense of um, managing their time. Okay, so let me draw this first. So let's say if you want your child to focus and remember information over a period of time, and perhaps the time is over 2 hours. They decide to study for 2 hours, and how much information they actually retain. I'll show you first how most students study over a period of time and how much they actually remember information and the more effective and more efficient way of utilizing this time management technique. Okay, so most students, right, when they start studying at the start of their study session, that's where they're able to focus. That's where they are able to remember things the best because that's where it's most impressionable. However, as time goes on, like for example, we started this webinar at 8 o'clock, and then right now it's like 9:15. Some of you may already be lethargic, distracted, your kids are running around the living room and things like that. And with all these things happening, your retention rate or your focus will start to dip. And then only towards the end, let's say I say, okay, we're going to end this webinar in like 10 minutes time, for example, right? And then you're like, oh, 10 minutes, okay, can focus again. So this is the same thing with your children. When they're doing tuition, when they're in the classroom, when they're doing homework, and you say, hey, 10 more minutes only, then they, oh, okay. Then they wake up, they focus again, and they focus only at the start and at the end. At the start is known as the primacy effect. And this is where they remember things right at the start. It is the most impressionable to them. The last part is known as the recency effect. And this is the most recent thing that they heard, they saw, they read, and they can recall this information. However, what happens in between is a lot of time wasted because they're not focused, they're not remembering things, they're very distracted. And at the end of a 2-hour study session, right, if you actually ask them like, what did you learn? What do you remember? They probably will only tell you some information from the start and at the end. And what they end up doing is sometimes they end up wasting a lot of time and it's not very effective at all. So if this is like you or your child, right, can you type yes in the chat? They are like this. Yes? Okay. Then I'll show you a technique, right? How you can actually manage their time better to make this more effective. Because there are two things, right, in terms of attention that you need to build in your child. Hey, why this thing came up in? And the first form of attention, right, is their sustained focus. Because how can you actually get them to focus on a task for a set period of time? And the second form of attention is their selective attention. Because students these days, or even adults, we are very selective in what we want to focus on. But how can you use selective attention, right, to focus on a task without any distractions? And I'm now going to share with you how you can utilize this one-time management technique. Some of you may already know this. This is known as the Pomodoro technique. And how the Pomodoro technique works, right, is can all of us guess over here, right? If you take an average human being, what is the amount of time that you think an average human being can stay focused, can pay attention before they start to get distracted? 45 minutes? 20 minutes? Okay, we're not talking about your Gen Alpha kids. Your Gen Alpha kids, probably 5 minutes, they distracted already, or less than that. Yeah, depends on topic, right? But on average, we're talking about average. Okay, most of you say 30 minutes. Okay, this is subjective because some of you may have a longer attention span. Some of your children may have a longer attention span, some of them shorter. But on average, it's about 30 minutes, 30 minutes. So how can we utilize this, right, more effectively? If let's say you break down 2 hours to 30 minutes block. So let's say, for example, the first 30 minutes block, this is 25 minutes, and then a 5 minutes break. Second block, 25 minutes. The third block, 25 minutes and 25 minutes. Okay, so this is the important part. So what you need to do first of all is 25 minutes. If your child is not used to this and you want to adopt the Pomodoro technique, you want to build the habit, is you put a timer and you tell your child like, okay, we're going to focus for the next 25 minutes and then we're going to take a 5 minutes break. So let's say they do their first 25 minutes and then we take a break. And in the 5 minutes break, right, this is the 5 minutes break, do not let them take out their device and say like, oh, can I go and play my game and all? Because you're breaking the momentum. And once they become distracted with their device, their game, 5 minutes break becomes like 45 minutes break. Okay, so just go and take a sip of water, just go and walk around, look out the window, things like this, just rest themselves mentally. Then you start the next 25-minute session. You take a 5 minutes break, start the third study session, and finally the fourth study session. And what happens over this 2 hours period when you break it down into 30 minutes chunk with a 5 minutes break in between is instead of 2 points of recall, as they did the first time, they are now going to have a total of 7 points of recall. And this actually boosts their productivity and their efficiency as well, because when they are focused for the 25 minutes chunk, right, they're able to remember information better. And when they take a 5 minutes break, they are resetting themselves and they're able to come back more focused. The second thing, in terms of selective attention, right, is what you want to do is focus on a task that you want them to complete. So especially if they're children, they don't know how to plan certain things by themselves yet, right? You can say, okay, the first 25 minutes, what we're going to do is we're going to complete questions 1 to question 5, okay? And we're going to pace ourselves. And then, like, let's say you set a timer, 25 minutes, let's work towards that. And you block out any distractions, their phones and whatnot, right? And this may take a while, but if your child is not able to focus for 25 minutes, you can start shorter. You can start like 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes. And this is like building your stamina, building, like, if you want to train for a marathon, maybe you can only run 30 minutes, but after a while you can run for 1 hour, you can run for 2 hours. So really pace your child. If your child is very short attention span, start with 15 minutes. If your child can go for 25 minutes, optimally go for 25 minutes. If your child can go for a stretch of 45 minutes or 1 hour, then adapt accordingly, okay? So this is the Pomodoro technique. And there is one thing that I want to say on this note also, is this is building a time management habit in your child. At first, you might struggle. At first, they might tell you they don't focus, but you need to instill this in them. You need to build a consistency. You need to build a habit, and then it becomes like a natural momentum. What will not work is if you do things based on your child's emotions, if they do things based on motivation. I personally hate the term motivation because motivation is based on a feeling, how they feel at that point in time. And feelings are fleeting. We might feel motivated now. We may feel unmotivated the next moment. We may not want to do it. But the thing is, if they build a discipline, they build a habit, they do it consistently, results will come over a period of time as well. And things will get easier, things will get better. So the start is always a struggle. But if they have the discipline and you coach them and you guide them through it, right, it becomes a habit, things will get easier, okay? So this is the time management technique. Once again, it's called the Pomodoro technique. And okay, let me stop this share. Okay, let me go back to my slides. For 25 minutes at one go with 15-minute break works. Yes, also to answer your question, Harvinda, it works also. Again, like I said, you adapt based on your child's threshold because some of your children can focus better, longer. Some of them cannot. For a start, right, you can even observe your child. Start with like 15 or 25 minutes and then observe whether they are distracted, they start to lose focus, these kind of things. Then you moderate accordingly, okay? Okay, back to the slides. I'm going now to the last part already. So the last part, right? The last learning gap that we want to bridge is really the mental and emotional gap of your children. Because like I shared at the start, that why I'm doing this is I'm really, really very passionate about how the next generation are going to develop much better and much stronger in future. Because these days they're exposed to so many things at such a young age, and a lot of them are struggling with it. A lot of them, when they tell you that, hey, I need to take care of my mental health, sometimes we need to take it seriously because they are exposed to a lot of stimulants, they're exposed to a lot of stresses, they're exposed to a lot of struggles that sometimes we may not even understand. And if we take things too lightly sometimes, or we dismiss some of the concerns or some of the challenges, it becomes a much bigger problem. And there was once 8 years ago when I took one of the classes, right? Why I'm so passionate about this was because I experienced something with one of the classes, and to summarize the whole thing was basically this class was labeled as a super problematic class, and they refused to learn. They were always fighting with each other, and it was not a conducive environment at all. And when I went in to try to intervene and mitigate the situation, the first thing I did was to really understand why they were behaving this way. And when I got down to the crux of the matter, I realized that it was because of a lot of feelings, a lot of issues, a lot of stresses, a lot of sufferings that they were going through, that they were all bottling, they were all like keeping inside, and they were acting out or taking it out on each other as a form of, or even a cry of help. And a lot of times we are so quick to label or so quick to judge that they're unmotivated, they're lazy, they're this and that. But do we actually understand what they're going through silently sometimes? So when I wrote this post, and the main appeal to this post was I was saying like, hey, let's not be so focused on academics and results all the time. We really need to take care of child's mental and emotional well-being, because we address that first, address their emotional and mental state first, and then they feel better about themselves, and then they will be in a better state to want to learn. And when I wrote this, right, like you can see, it went super viral, and I got into quite a bit of trouble with MOE because there were some parents who complain, is like, why do we have to focus on a child's emotional and mental well-being? Like, focus on their grades. That's the most important thing. That's how they succeed in life. So I mean, this was written 8 years ago, and I was very adamant about like, we need to take care of their mental and emotional well-being. We're now in 2024, 8 years later. And finally, our whole education system is placing a lot stronger emphasis on their emotional and mental well-being as well. Because I want to show parents on this last segment, right, this last note, some of the challenges that your children are facing or will face. Some of it are not new. We ourselves went through it when we were teenagers, like peer pressure, expectations of results from ourselves or parents. But what is new with this new Gen Alpha, or even your secondary school teenagers, is this exposure to social influences on their devices, is this feeling of insecurity about themselves and future. Because even these days, we read news, we see like HDB prices are by the millions of dollars, job scarcity, people are getting retrenched and all that. And the youths also, like, they fear this. They're like, I graduate from university, then what's going to happen to me? I cannot afford HDB. I cannot afford to live in Singapore. I cannot find a job. And they actually worry about all these things. And sometimes when they are constantly exposed on social media, there's this constant comparison and competition, right? They start to withdraw. They start to become, they isolate themselves. They don't know how to deal with all these things. And if youths and adults are already feeling all these things, what more your children who are like 10 years old, 11 years old, 12 years old, maybe even 13 years old? If they're already faced with all these adult situations that we are facing, and they don't know how to cope, they don't know how to manage, sometimes their escapism could be the most drastic form. And I'll show you this last case study, which is quite tragic, but this is why it's so important to understand and support the emotional and mental well-being of your children. So there's this one mom that wrote this to me once, and she was saying that her friend's P6 daughter like was going through something in her life, and the daughter couldn't take it anymore, and eventually decided to go to the 23rd floor and commit suicide. And whatever happened in her life, whether she regrets the decision, whether the parents are remorseful, whether whoever could have done something, it's too late. Because this girl went through so much pain to a point where she said, I can't deal with this anymore. 12 years old, 12 years of her life, went to the 23rd floor and decided to take her own life. Some people might think this is just one incident. There's something that I want to say, you know, working with all the teenagers, right? Actually, the fact is every single year, whether primary school, secondary school, or tertiary, there is always at least one suicide case. One student is taking their life. This is not reported because it's super sensitive, and mainstream media doesn't want this to be like a trend amongst the youths and the children. But every single year, at least one student is taking their life. And what if that one student becomes your child? So this is very serious, because we need to understand that the children are growing up in a different generation, different challenges, and sometimes we need to show more compassion and empathy and even understand things from their point of view. So for this last part, I know it's almost 9:30, but I think it's really important. I'm just going to maybe hurry through this a bit. But on a lighter note, right, there's this one movie that I really love, because I think it takes such a complex issue in terms of emotions and simplifies it in such a way that children understand. Any of you parents, you know this movie? This is one of my favorite animation, Inside Out. Yeah, correct. If you haven't seen this movie with your children, right, please do during the holidays. Go and like stream on YouTube or Disney Plus or something. Okay, so I'm going to share a last framework, right? How we can actually support and understand the mental and emotional well-being of your children better, so that they can start to understand themselves also and take more positive action that will change the results of their academics as well as their life. Okay, so the first thing, is we always have to understand what your children are going through, because a lot of times, right, the children themselves, they are influenced by their friends, influenced by social media, influenced by their devices, and that's where they form their mindset. And what they think and how they develop their mindset are influenced by all these things that they are exposed to. And at this point, I want to say again, if your kids are tweens, they're still in primary school, you have a very strong influence shaping the foundation, their values, their beliefs, their thoughts. Because once we sometimes understand what they think, right, we're able to address it. But I want to show you what most students think. They always think that they cannot do it. They don't have time. They're not good enough. They face challenges, they give up. And why? It's because they have limiting beliefs. They're holding themselves back because of their mindset. So the first thing we need to address, the first thing we need to acknowledge, the first thing we need to understand from the point of view of the next generation is what they are thinking. Get into their mindset. If they're young, you can still shape their mindset, shape their beliefs, instill values in them. The next thing is how they feel. And a lot of times, right, we need to create a safe space for them to share how, and more importantly, why they feel a certain way. Because, for example, if you grew up like my mom, I take my mom, for example, when I went through a period of time where I was personally depressed, right? And my mom doesn't understand depression. She doesn't have time or capacity or understanding for feelings. She's like, what is depression? Go and not waste time being depressed. Go and study, go and excel in your studies and things like that. So my mom always dismisses emotions, never ever validates it. And it's important for your children not to do that, because if you dismiss, you invalidate their emotions, their experiences, and they feel unsafe, they feel unheard, they feel unseen. They're going to keep things from you. They're going to withdraw inwards. They're going to seek validation elsewhere. And then it becomes an even bigger problem. So understanding their thoughts, understanding their reasons why they feel a certain way, this would then be able to get us to influence their actions sometimes. Because I think the biggest win, right, for parents sometimes is if your child ever tells you, I'm aware of what I think. I understand why I feel this way. Can I ask your advice? What should I do? And if they ever ask your advice, what should you do? They are accepting and they are receptive to what you may suggest. And this is where we really like, hey, these are some of the action steps. These are some of the habits, right, that you can either create for yourself or you can start to change so that you can have a different result. Because if we understand what actions that they're taking that is useful or not useful, and we start to change that or create better habits, right, then when they actually get their results, they will start to go through this cycle again, and they're going to feel a certain way about themselves. So I'm going to do a really quick experiment on you guys to understand this and internalize this, right? What you think, first of all, what you think, right, will influence the way you feel, the actions that you take, and the results that you get. In the next picture, I'll show you an optical illusion. And I would like you to find a shape. I'll tell you what the shape is. The shape is a circle. Okay, you have to find a circle, and you're going to go through this whole process. Okay, and then how I know whether you actually found the circle or not, right? I would like you to type in the chat how many circles you found. Okay, I only show the picture for 10 seconds. Ready and go. Okay, go. How many circles can you find? Okay, well, very fast. Sharon found 16. Michelle says 4. Pizza 16, Julian 16, Evelyn 16, Lulin. Slaw says 0, Sining says 0. Okay, you can see already what's happening, right? Some of you say 16, some of you say 0, some of you say 4, some of you say 20. The correct answer is there are 16 circles. I'll briefly and quickly share with you. So the circles are 4 by 4. You see my mouse over here. Then you see the circle. This is circle 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 by 4 the circles, there are 16 circles in total, okay? Why I'm showing you this optical illusion is because let's go back to this. When I first showed you this optical illusion and I told you there are circles, find the circles, how many circles are there? Some of you, your mindset, your thought process is, what circles? There are 0 circles. This is a lie, this is a scam, this is a waste of time. You shut off because you don't believe it and you don't, your mindset, your thoughts, right, is, there's no circles at all. And once you have that fixed mindset, a closed mindset, right, nothing, you can't even proceed to the next one, because how you feel is you already feel cheated, you already feel this is a waste of time, you already feel lousy about yourself. Some of you, when you saw people writing 16, right, you start to feel like, hey, you need to catch up. Like, why they can see 16 circles, I cannot see 16 circles at all. And the action you took is like, let me find the circles. Or even when I showed you where the 16 circles are, the act of showing you, right, you're like, oh, actually it's over there. The results, you saw the 16 circles. Then you start to think again, like, hey, why didn't see it the first time? Why I feel like so dumb? Why I missed it out? So this is exactly what your kids are going through whenever they learn something new, right? If they already start off believing that they're lousy, they cannot see it, they cannot do it, and they feel a certain way, right? They're going to take negative actions. If it's a negative thought, negative feeling, but if, let's say, it's a positive experience, a positive cycle that they go through, that's where we can build these things better and stronger. Because the first thing we have to know is what are their thoughts. The second thing is why they feel a certain way, and create a space for them to share with you why. And after they understand why they feel and what they think, then they have to start to think how they can improve their situation. And if they ask you, instead of you imposing, you controlling, right, be involved in the discussion with them. How can we improve this experience, this feeling, this thought to get a better results? Because results are a matter of when. When they get good results, they continue to build on it. If they get not so good results, not so ideal results, we have to go back to what they think, what they feel, how can we do things better to break this process, right? Break this cycle so that they can change something. Because you don't want them to grow up to continue this vicious cycle in a negative spiral. Okay, so you want to build them up to like address like, hey, how can I do things better to get different results? Because the most important thing, and I want to end this on this note, is all these things, their thoughts, their feelings, the actions that they take, and finally the results that they get, right? It all builds their identity. It builds your child's character. And if they're now P6, and if they're going to take their PSLE results 2 weeks' time, and if the result is just a matter of when, right? 2 weeks' time, and the actions that you take or the experience that they go through, they will start to have certain thoughts. They will start to feel a certain way. They might start to do things over the December holidays that may create a better experience in secondary school or not. Okay, so identity is really important. And this is something that I hope all parents or even educators, adults here, were able to internalize and sometimes even self-reflect ourselves. What are we doing to our children? What must we ourselves change to help them better? Okay. And why I think this is really important, I want to share this one last story to round up the evening. And this was a class I once took. Anyone knows the school, Green Pinafore Girls? It's a girls' school, obviously, but anyone, you're alumni of this school? Yes, TKGS, Tanjung Katong Girls' School. So this was after the workshop I did with them, right? But the backstory to this class was when I was sent a memo about this class, the memo was like, this class is underperforming and they need help. So when I intervened and I coached this class, the vibe was just off. The vibe to the whole class, all the girls, was just like something was up, something was wrong. And they all looked dejected, they all looked demoralized, they looked like unmotivated. And again, the thought, right? Thought and feelings. I was asking, trying to understand what they were thinking and why they were feeling a certain way. So when we eventually got down to what they were thinking and why they were feeling a certain way, this was what happened. It was sometime in September, and they just got their prelim results, Sec 4 class, express class. And they were averaging about 30 points for their prelims. And they said our O levels is just like 1 month away. And we're averaging 30 points for our prelims. We think there's no hope. We're the worst performing express class in TKGS. We don't think we can make it at all. So like, what's the point of trying? So you see, their mindset is really like, we're done for. They're feeling dejected. They don't want to take any more action because like, what's the point? And if they don't like nip it in the bud, right? Like, it's just going to produce a undesirable result. So we address the way they were thinking, we address the feelings, validate certain experiences, feelings they were feeling. And finally, right, we really created or we changed certain things that were helpful for them or that were not working for them. We needed them to be aware of it, adapt, or even change certain things. I want to show you when they went through this whole process and why this is so important is because a few of the girls, they managed to go into their dream JC or dream poly. And I want to show you the result of it. So this girl, she wanted to go poly, and you can see in her own words, right? She was getting F9 for her maths since Sec 1. Her O-level, she got C5. Her prelims, she was getting like 29 points. Her O-level, she got 16 points. Prelims, 29 points in September. O-levels, she got 16 points 1 month later. It was not that she was not capable, not competent. It was just that there were certain things that was holding her back. And once she broke through that, right, she was able to go from F9 even to a pass for her math. This other girl, same class also, wanted to go to ACJC. ACJC science stream, by the way, it's about 7 or 8 points. She was getting like 28 points for her prelims. And 1 month later, she slashed by 21 points and she made it to ACJC together with her best friend. This is why it's so important when your child now is in primary school or even secondary school, if you can change their mindset, if you can understand how they feel, if you can get them to develop better, more useful, productive habits, it will change their result. And if the result is a positive result and experience, they're going to aspire for greater and better. And this is the last thing that I wanted to share because it's so important, right? We as adults being involved in a child's life, being involved in their transition from tweens to teens. And there's this one quote that I wanted to share and end this off. And that is that every single one of your child is so important, is so precious, but they all learn in a different way and pace. But just know that your child is really important, your child's really precious, and you're not just capable of learning and becoming, but they are already going to succeed with your support and love. Because I'm sure you've heard of this that says like, it takes a village to raise a child. And this is why we're doing this webinar, because we really want to share certain things that may help you, may help your child better. Okay, so I'm sorry this took a while, right? The time now is 9:40. But on this note also, this is for those of you who are logged into this webinar, right? This is the end of the sharing. For some of the parents over here, because over the last 2 weeks, right, some parents have been like, hey, we learned certain things that are useful, and we want to ask whether you actually run anything for the tweens or teens. So the next part, I'm going to be sharing with you guys who may be interested, some of the things that we are doing at Maverick Movement for your tweens or teens. But on this note, before I share all the details, right, any of you, if you found this useful and you need to log off because it's a bit late right now, I just want to thank you for joining for this session over here. And I hope this is useful for you. Parents who are interested of the things we're running for Maverick, with Maverick for your teens or your tweens, right? Stay on for a while because I'll share some of the details. There are good news and bad news that I'm going to share, okay, in the next 5 minutes. So if you want to stay on, I'm going to jump into it right now. But anyone else, if you want to keep in touch with us, right? Go to the Instagram page and just follow our Instagram because we'll update some things there also. So in future, we run webinars like this. You can get updates over there. Okay. Or if you want to reach out to me personally, it's my Facebook. Okay. So for parents staying on, Maverick Movement are going to be running certain things for parents, for teenagers, as well as tweens. And one of the things that we really want to do to shape the next generation, right, is to get them to be more self-driven, to be more self-confident. Instead of parents nagging at them, hoping for the best for them, these youths that I've coached are now students who say like, I want to do better. I want to actually succeed in my life. And once upon a time, they all came from different challenges that you shared. They were not very confident. They struggled with their time management. They were not getting very good grades in school. They were not feeling good about themselves. And maybe right now your child could be feeling that, or you as a parent, you could be worrying about these things for your child. I'm going to show you their journey and their transformation and how, if you're interested, can be on this journey together with you.
I cannot magically improve, so I'm just taking tiny steps. I'm like the type very lazy, very inactive, no motivation. So I kind of like stepped up, like went out of my comfort zone and tried to do things like maybe like 90% effort, better than like 45%.
The biggest thing that Matt has helped me with is with my time management and how I should approach things. Because before Matt, I would try my hardest in school for the first 2 terms and I would burn out. Same with other things, I would put in a lot of effort at the start and then I'll burn out towards the end and then the quality would die off. But thanks to Matt, I think he's one helped me with my time management. So I've really been able to plan my time out better so I don't I don't feel tired throughout the whole week. He's helped me understand what works and what doesn't for me, so I can better pace myself. And it shows because this year I've been able to maintain a steady rhythm, studying my CCA, everything. I'm not seeing myself burning out as much as I usually would.
Before the masterclass, I was definitely a lot introverted. I was really scared to talk to people, and if there were any opportunities, I was always doubting myself, should I go for this? What if I fail? And things like that. But I feel like after the masterclass, it allowed me to gain a lot more confidence. So I think that the most immediate way in which I saw my growth after the masterclass was actually on the second last day. It was when I already started seeing results. So on that night, I happened to have a call for a project for school. And during the project, I realized that I was able to share more of my opinions and ideas. Usually before the masterclass, I would be very quiet during calls. I'm always a person who's muted and then off camera. But during that night, I realized that I wasn't afraid to share my opinions anymore. And when I saw how my group mates reacted and they were like, oh yeah, that's a good idea, then it also allowed me to be wow, I should talk more. And everyone, people will appreciate your input. So just don't be scared and go for it.
I think under Matt, I've managed to question a lot of things. I've learned to try to find that deeper understanding to different things. He knows how to see things from many different perspectives. On a bigger scale or personally, whether it directly looking at my point of view or from his point of view or from my parents, he is able to understand all the different sides of things. And whether it comes to my personal problems or it could be even issues that may be happening in the world, whenever I talk to him about it, it's interesting and insightful to hear what he says, because many a times, even though I consider different perspectives, but I realize that there's other sides of things, and when he adds onto that input, I think it's really cool because you get to understand things from more sides of the story.
Okay, so wait, let me go to the next one. So the thing is, I have some good news and bad news to share. Okay, so for parents who are still logged in, well, there's still 260 of you in this webinar. Thank you for staying on. I'm not going to review some of the things, the good news and the bad news. So I usually work with Gen Zs, okay, your teenagers who are Sec 4s and above, Sec 3s and above. But there have been requests from primary schools even, hey, can Maverick Movement do something for the primary schools? So we decided to run a workshop for tweens, for especially P6s or even P5s who are going to transition into their teenhood, who are going to go into secondary school next year or in 2 years' time. And on this note, before I share some of the details, I know some of the parents here, your kids are teenagers. Later, I'll ask about the teenage parents. But right now, specifically for P6 or even P5 parents, if you're interested in possibly a workshop during this holiday to send your child to transition and prepare for PSLE results and also secondary school, can you type tweens in the chat? Because if you type tweens in the chat, later if you miss out on the information, and if you actually want my team to reach out to you, we'll reach out to you if you type tweens in the chat. Okay, so there are quite a lot of you. So there is good news and a bad news. The good news is this is the third and final webinar that we're running, because over the last 2 weeks, we've been speaking to hundreds of parents as well. And we had a class. That is the bad news. We had a class and it was fully signed up. Okay, so let me drop the details first. So we were opening up this class to 40 students, and we had parents signing up, and it was fully signed up. Okay, so I want to share the bad news first, but it's going to be good news, so stay on for a while. So I know some of you are still spamming tweens. Wait, first, let me share the details first. So on day one, of this 2 days bootcamp, we're going to focus on building their confidence. We're going to focus on instilling certain values and influence in them so that they can transition better into secondary school. We're going to improve their decision-making and their communication skills. We're going to also work on their awareness, their ability to adapt, and also to reflect on certain experiences. On day 2 of the workshop, we're going to really break it down on how they can manage their time better, how they can manage their goals more realistically, and also in preparation for their PSLE results, in 2 weeks' time, how they can manage this emotional and mental milestone that they're going to go through. So in this workshop also on day 2, at the end, we're going to involve the parents as well. So parents, we want you to be involved in part of their journey. We want to support you as well. So on day 2, parents will be involved. I know you have a lot of questions. We'll answer some of your questions at the end of this whole thing, okay? So the bad news, like I shared, is that the class was fully filled when we launched it. So first run already fully filled. And actually tonight's webinar, right, is really just to share insights and this whole thing with you guys. But a lot of parents have been requesting, like, can you run a second run? So the good news is, but this one is really first come, first serve already, because the good news is we're going to run a second run. The first dates were actually the weekend before the PSLE results, because we wanted to support the parents and the students, P6 students, before the release of the PSLE results. So the second run, we're going to be running it immediately after the PSLE results. Okay, so here are the details. For this second run class, it's going to be on the 23rd and 24th of November. It's going to be 2 full days at Pasir Panjang, and we only have like these few spots left. Okay, we only have 20 seats left. Each class is 40. Already half of the second class is filled, and this is at 299. Okay, so I'm going to get my team, right, to drop the link. Okay, guys, don't spam the chat first, because importantly, I'm going to get my team. Tammy, can you drop the link in the chat? So parents, before I share all the other details, if you have teenage kids and all that, before I answer your questions, right? We only have 21 seats left for this class. And I know some of the concerns, some of the questions that parents might have will be like, oh, what if we're on holiday and things like that? We're going to answer some of the questions now. We're going to address some of the things now. If you have questions regarding the your child also, I'm going to address some of your questions now. But this is also to parents of teenagers. Okay, I know you're waiting for this. So my youth class only runs once a year in June. And the good news, though, is at the end of this year, we're going to run a leadership workshop for teenagers, for 13 and upwards. So Tammy, you take note also, okay? If you're teenage parents, if you're interested in a workshop for your teens, it's not this workshop, it's a different workshop, leadership workshop. Can you, wait. All the tween parents, you took note of the link in the chat already, right? Okay, only 21 seats left. So, okay, thank you, Havinda. So if you're a teenage parent, can you, or parents of a teenager, can you type teen? Teen. Don't type tween, teen. Oh, wow. We're getting all that. Okay, so all the parents will take note of your names, and Tammy will be sending you like priority to sign up for our leadership workshop, because we're running a leadership workshop for teenagers at the end of the year. It's different from my annual class. Okay, we're doing a one-day leadership workshop for teenagers. Okay, so on this note, I'm going to invite Tammy. Tammy, by the way, is one of the founders of Maverick Movement also, and she has a master's in education, right? So she will be working with me during this Tweens to Teen workshop, as well as if your teens are going to come for our leadership workshop, right? You'll be seeing us together with some of the youths as well. And at this point, we're going to answer some of your questions with regards to the workshops we run, with regards to any of the issues that you're facing with your child. So Tammy, do you want to facilitate this?
Yes, can you see me? I actually on my screen, but probably can't see. It's okay, we can go into it.
Yes, we can see you.
Parents are asking if I have a P4 teen or the 11-year-old, is it suitable? What do you say, Matt?
Okay, so P4 is a bit too young at this point in time, and the reason why is actually we want to prioritize the P6s because they are immediately going to be getting their PSLE results and are transitioning into secondary school, right? So actually the priority are for the P6s. We want to support them, we want to support the parents, and we want to help them in their results, their reaction to it, and also preparing for secondary school. However, we're also opening it up to primary 5s. So the lowest we're going is primary 5, because P5s are going to P6 next year, and some of the things that they learn in this bootcamp will also help them prepare for P6 next year. So for P4 may still be a bit too young. Let them grow up 1 more year, 2 more years, then you can send them to us.
Yeah, I think some of the parents are also mentioning, 23rd November, there's actually an open house in school.
Right.
It's because we also ran this, and the other slot was the week before, and there were also open houses.
Yep.
But what do you say to parents that are interested in open houses?
Okay, so I addressed this last week also, because 16, 17, 23rd, 24th, right, they're all the secondary school open houses. And yes, it's very important for your child, right, to have a sense of the school that they may possibly go to. But 2 ways you can go about this. So first way, right, is parents, you can have a conversation with your child, and you ask them like, hey, would you like to go for your open house? Or mommy, daddy can go on your behalf to check out the school. Then you can go for this class, right? Or the second option is a bit more radical, I would say, that if you, as a parent, as an adult, feel that one or the other is more important, which would you want your child to be part of? Because let's say if you feel that this could be important for your child and you want to send them to this, we're going to be doing our best to prepare your child. And the honest truth is, I mean, I don't know if I can say this because there might be some MOE staff or educators in this whole webinar, but if you ask me about my opinion of a certain secondary school, I've gone to pretty much all the secondary schools in Singapore, so I can tell you honestly how the environment is like, how the school is like also. So if you're part of the boot camp, we can have a conversation in person. I can give you my take on it also. Yeah. So to answer the question, yes, there are secondary school open houses happening on both weekends, especially 23rd, 24th, but which do you weigh out that might be more important lah?
I think a parent asked about parents' involvement in this bootcamp.
Okay, so thank you for the question. So like I showed you the 2 days, right? Parents, you'll be involved only in the last 2 hours on day 2. So on 24th of November, 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. And we feel it's very important for parents to be part of their journey, right? Their transition to secondary school. So that's why we are supporting you. We're inviting you to it. But the other day 1 and half day of day 2, right? It's pretty much you drop your kids at Pasir Panjang and they're with us and you can like relax and chill for like the 2 days lah.
I think there are some questions with regards to learning abilities. So if they have diagnosed ADHD or things like that, would they be suitable for the camp?
Okay, so thank you. So I know some parents over here, you're concerned because your child might have dyslexia, ADHD, maybe on the spectrum and things like that. Disclaimer, so I'm not a specialist in terms of learning needs, right? So if they are really, there are certain learning challenges that they're already facing, you would know best, okay, parents? So this workshop is very interactive, it's very experiential, and if there are certain things that triggers them or they may not be able to adapt or integrate themselves into these kind of environment or these kind of situations, right? It may not be suitable for them. However, little things like dyslexia and things like that, there's no problem at all because again, this is a very experiential camps. We're going to put them through situations that they will experience and they will have to learn from these situations. Yeah. So as long as they can integrate into like normal classroom environment, it wouldn't be an issue.
The parent asked, would you advise if the sibling join together and they are both in the right age group?
Yeah, I
P6?
saw we saying thank you for that question. So the good and bad news is your sibling, your children may probably like, wow, my brother, sister, going, I don't want to be in the same camp as them, right? But what we'll do is we'll separate your kids. So they'll be working in groups as well, but they will not be in the same group. Okay. So that's the assurance that we want to give parents also.
I think a lot of parents strongly advocated for a weekday slot. Apologies that we aren't able to create one. I think no matter which day, right, that we put, there'll be some parents that cannot make it or so. But don't worry, if you are in our email list, we will update you if there are any upcoming programs that might fit your timetable. Okay, next one.
On this note also, right, we only have about 8 spots left. Okay, so I know some parents are like, oh, can we have a weekday? The thing is, our first class we already like fully filled, so we open up this second class, and yeah, like what Tammy said, we can't accommodate to everyone. I know some have holiday plans and all that, but we're only doing maximum 2 runs, 40 students per class. We only have 8 more spots for this second date. Tammy, can you drop the link again in the chat?
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. So unfortunately, if you are not able to meet these dates, right? If you have holiday plans or something else, then possibly next year for our youth workshop, right? We'll give you priority lah, because we'll send out information or follow our Maverick Instagram page for updates.
There are 2 parents that asked about the camp itself.
Mhm.
Are there high risk water type activities that I have to be worried of? And
No.
do I
So there will not be any high risk activity, don't worry. It's all within this classroom. This image that you see, right, is the actual classroom that we'll be using. And if don't worry lah, if your child is very dangerous in terms of like they jump around and all that. I want to tell you a funny story. Okay, sidetrack a bit, right? Everything has been quite serious and intense tonight. The last time when I did like a junior masterclass, it was a 4 days workshop for primary 4 to primary 6 kids. Your kids are, at this age, right? They are so cute and so crazy at the same time. So there was a group of boys who were like gathered around and they were pouring like white powder in each other's hands and all that. Then when I went over and asked them, what are you boys doing? What is this? Then they turned to me and smile, right? And they say, this is drugs. You want some? And I was like quite concerned, right? I was like, what is this? Then it was like they went to McDonald's to get like sugar sachets and like pour sugar, and then they ate the sugar and went into sugar rush, right? And they went crazy and all that. So I mean, okay, back to your question. Is it dangerous? No. But if your kid is dangerous, please don't send them to me also, okay, for my own sanity also. Because if they are like too crazy, like I might just send them back to you.
Yeah, but I would like to let the parents know as well, because usually for our programs and boot camps, we have adults, but more importantly, a lot of our Maverick graduates actually come back to volunteer. And we think that having peer influence is also very important. So all these 姐姐 koko, they'll be there to jaga them and take care of them as well. So not to worry too much, parents.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll address some questions about PSLE because the results are going to be coming out soon. So I think
Yes.
some ask about responses when it comes to the results itself. How do you react?
Oh, sorry, I was checking the message. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, PSLE. So
Yeah.
what are parents gonna do if it comes out to be not so good results, or it comes out to be, very ideal results? How should they respond?
I think the ideal results naturally, like you happy, your child happy, everybody happy, and you go and celebrate, right? So that one not much issue. But what if the results of your child is less than ideal? And the thing is, your child would definitely feel some form of emotions, whether it's happiness, whether it's sadness, whether it's disappointment, whether they feel that they've done their best. But I think what's very important, first of all, for all parents of P6 students, it's even what you don't say, because it's all the non-verbal things, like how your facial expression, like even how you respond when they tell you their results, or they pass you their transcript and all that, right? Because all these things, your child already feels a certain way, and if the results are not ideal, and they will be observing your reaction to it. And like I said, it's very, very crucial, it's very important, because this is a point where if you know that you're feeling a certain way, it's not exactly the best, and you choose to encourage them, to affirm them, to let them know like, hey, it's okay. Let's talk about how we can approach this. We go home and let's go deeper into this. Then they feel like, okay, at least there is still hope. My parents love me regardless of the results. However, if let's say you even give them cold treatment, even if you don't say anything and you just like the disappointment is shown on your face, and they will feel even more affected because they're already upset about their results, and you not saying anything, you not doing anything, like will affect them. So one of the parents was sharing the other night, which is very true, like this could be a very pivotal and crucial point in their whole journey from tween to teen, that you can either build or burn the bridges. So the best form of connection that you can build, right, is really affirm them regardless of their result. Like let them know that, hey, it's just one part of their journey, but let's explore like what can we do, what can we reflect from their P6 results, what can we do better going into their school holidays, going into their secondary school years. Yeah. So remember, just guide them rather than tell them, right? Guide them and hear their opinions, listen to their opinions, give them space, give them time to process their emotions and thoughts as well.
All right, one parent asked about expressiveness. How do we encourage them to express their emotion in a safe, warm, loving, familiar environment?
So to get your child to open up, right? If your child is still in primary school, sometimes it's create opportunities for positive feelings. What I mean by this, right, is if first of all, parents, right, now is the school holidays, coming to school holidays, or even the weekends, take the effort and time to create positive experiences. So take them out. Don't just like stay at home, or don't just go restaurants and then the whole family takes out their phone and just glued to their screen, right? But create a new experience for them. And when they feel good, right, naturally they will want to have conversations. When you ask them, they're more open to talk. And this is important when they are still kids, because kids, when they're happy, they will talk more and they will respond to you better. With your teenagers, if your child is already a teenager, sometimes it's just intentionally or even subtly, like create space. You don't have to force a conversation. Your child will feel awkward. You'll feel like you're talking to a wall. But just like after dinner, for example, if you're sitting in the living room, just sometimes just slip in occasional conversations like, what do you think of this show that you're watching? Or discuss certain things about the show. There is very simple conversations. Because if you ask them too complicated things, even like how's your day, to them it's complicated if they don't want to talk about it. Then they just like say, okay, lor. But the important thing is, even if you don't get the immediate ideal response now, do it consistently. and just give them the space, like slip in occasional conversations and ask them about things or talk about things that they're interested in. Like, let's say if you know they're playing a certain games, right? What you could do is you can even maybe go and research about the game. Like these days, the kids, apparently they play this Wukong game, right? And then even the Gen Alpha kids are talking about it. So then sometimes I know lah, but I'll play dumb lah. Then I'll say like, hey, you know this Wukong game, right? Like, what's it about? Can you tell me? Then you'll be very excited to tell you. Okay, so find things that they are excited about, find things that they're interested in, and then you play dumb lah and get them to educate you lah. Yeah, so these are a few tips.
Thanks, Matt. Next question by Lao Ping. She sent this twice, so I must answer this.
Okay.
What do you suggest if the teen isn't responsive or reciprocating when parents try to connect with him or her?
Okay, so the most drastic thing I would say, right, is sometimes you need third-party intervention, because if, let's say, the relationship is already broken, the bridge is already burned and the doors are already closed, then sometimes they do need a third-party intervention. And it doesn't necessarily have to be me as a coach. It could be a relative of yours that they grew up respecting. As long as it's an adult figure that they respect or that they trust. It could be a teacher. It could be a relative. It could be a coach. But sometimes you need this third-party intervention, right, to facilitate that conversation or to be the bridge between your child and you. Because let's say if they are not opening up, is it because of something that happened in their growing years that made them shut the doors on you? Is it something to do with what they might be going through and they're retreating inwards and they're refusing to talk? And sometimes this one, a bit more serious, must go for counseling, therapy and all that to diagnose it better. And that's why sometimes there is a need for third-party intervention.
I think some parents ask, what if my twin doesn't want to go? Hard to woo her to join. She says she's awkward to join without a friend.
Okay, for San, right, I saw your comment over here, and this is where, on a very serious note, right, I need parents to understand that if you're a parent that is very, I know I shared about listen to the opinion of your child, right? But if you're too lenient and you give too much leeway and if you give too much choices to your tween, what happens is when they go into secondary school, sometimes you face a bigger challenge. And what I mean by this is, if you as an adult, you know that there are certain things that you like your child to be better at, and you feel that this might be useful to them, then perhaps as an adult, as a parent, you make the decision for them, because I can almost promise you that they might be hesitant because no friends and things like that. They are anxious, they don't know what's going to happen, and it's natural. But a lot of times, all the kids, after they go for these camps and all that, they're like, oh, thanks, mom, thanks, that is the best thing ever happened. So parents, sometimes, if you feel that a decision is important, beneficial, and while they're still kids, right, you may need to make the decision for them, because if next year they go into Sec 1 and then you face like a big challenge, and then if you come to me, right, I'll be like, yeah lah, you see lah, you sometimes give them too much decision making, right, and you don't build that strong foundation, then you're losing them a lot more. So to San, your question, right, I would say that sometimes let your girl understand like how it may be beneficial for her. And then even if she's super resistant, but you feel that she may actually need it, then you may have to make a decision for her. On this note also, I want to say, because one of the parents asked this the other night, and let me ask this again, Tammy. So I'm going to guess that majority of you still in this chat. How many of you? Oh, there's still like over 150 of you in this chat. Okay, I'm going to guess that majority of you are mothers in this webinar tonight. Okay, so if you're a mom, can you type mom? If you're a dad, can you type dad? If both mom and dad are in front of the screen, can you? Yeah, see, I guess mom, right? I would say maybe 70, 80% are mothers. See, mama, no dad. There's not a single dad in this chat. Okay, well, I see a mom and dad from Rona. I see a dad. Oh, finally one dad from Abdul Aziz. Thank you, sir. Okay, and Candy's dad over here. Okay, so the thing is, usually the fathers might be the sole breadwinner and they might be tired at the end of the day. But there's one thing that I want to say to the mothers and the dads is, father and mother need to be a team together. So you cannot be like two different people having two different parenting style, and then your child is very smart. They know who to go to for what, right? So you cannot contradict each other. If there are certain things that you want your child to develop or to be or to learn or to grow, right, both of you need to be aligned and both of you need to play your part in different ways. Another thing that I might say that may be a bit controversial is you are the parent of your child. So even like tonight's session, when I share all these insight and tips, right, like ultimately, there is no one size fits all. There are things that may work for your child, that may not work for your child. And sometimes your in-laws, your own parents might want to impose their parenting style on your child, but you need to take a stand what is useful for your child and what you want to instill into your child. So mom and dad have to be a team together, have to be aligned, and also you need to take a stand in terms of how you want to raise your child, because every child is different. There is no one size fits all.
Thanks, Matt. I just want to answer a few questions regarding, a lot of parents are asking us about Juneteenth workshop, any more workshop details. Don't worry, we will WhatsApp you all the details after this, so you won't miss out anything. Tonight we'll address the questions regarding parenting right till the end of the session. If you are still waiting for any information about the other camps, right, we'll not review it tonight because we are still preparing our calendar for year 2025. So just sign off if you don't have any more questions. But thanks for
There are two things. So parents, if you're still waiting for, and no other workshops and all that, right? All this because this is where we'll update most of the latest things. But if you want to sign your teenager for the leadership thing, my team will send you the details. You can like respond there. But right now we have like just 5 more spots. I think one parent is asking the MC thing, right? So Tammy, do you want to address if let's say MC on the day?
we will text them separately on WhatsApp then.
Okay.
Yeah. I think there are some questions still that I want to address before I end this call regarding privacy. I think this is something that we haven't really talked about tonight. Kids, they have their own privacy, they have their own bubble, right? How do parents still talk to them, still communicate with them, and have some sort of control without invading their privacy?
Okay, so like teenagers, right? What they crave the most is autonomy. They want to be in control. They want to have this sense of freedom or even privacy. And truth is, parents, we were all teenagers once upon a time, and there were things that we hid from our parents. Even some things, the teens that I work with, very cute lah. Sometimes they get into relationships, right? Then they will tell me, but they will say, hey, don't tell my parents, these kind of things. So they do have their own secrets. And I think the important thing for parents is don't try to pry, because the more you try to pry, you're going to secretly follow them on Instagram. They will know one, they will block you, right? They will not want you to know what's up with their life and things like that. So sometimes just allow them like this privacy or this sense of freedom. But what's important is, let's say there are certain things that that they might be exposed to. For example, if they might potentially be in a BGR, boy-girl relationship, or they might potentially be in an environment where the kids are vaping and things like that, then instead of just saying this is right, this is wrong, then get them to be aware of their choices and their consequences. Because if your child is someone that, like me when I was a teenager, the more you say no, the more they will go and do it, right? It becomes a problem. The more you try to pry, the more they try to hide. It's a constant cat and mouse game. So what you can do, the solution is talk about the issue, listen to their opinions on it. That's where you can understand their mindset, remember what they think, what they believe, and understand why they feel a certain way. And then ask them for permission. Can I share my opinion on this? Would you like to hear my advice, hear my suggestion? And if they say, yeah, okay, then that's where you can influence their thought process. But if you like gatekeep, you shut down, you like say no, or you try to pry, right? That's where it gets more challenging.
That's a pretty good tip. Influence instead of control, right? Question by Elise Chong. She asked, my friends all tell me that they have to learn the hard way when he's in the army. Is this still valid? Although I do not wish for him to wait till he's in the army, maybe 18, 19 years old.
Yeah, if you don't want to wait till their army, right, make sure you send them they're 12 years old. And I say this candidly, and I say this seriously also, because we have a lot of parents every single day. They're like, hey, can I send my child to Maverick, right? Can you coach my child? Then we ask, how old is your child? Oh, they're 18, they're 21, they're 22 years old. But that's an age group that I don't work with already. They're entering adulthood already. And everything that we could have done while they were still young to shape them, to change the trajectory, right? Like, now is still the time if your kids are young. But if, let's say, something tragic happens, or if they're already stuck in a negative and vicious cycle, and we try to break that in the later years, right? Sometimes even in army, for example, they might have to learn things the hard way. And that's why it's important also, parents, let your child fail sometimes, let your child be hurt. Don't protect them too much. Don't gatekeep too much. If they make mistakes, let them learn from it.
Thanks, man. I think very last question for tonight because it's really late.
Yeah.
Regarding motivation, right? How do I motivate my child to study well, pay attention, be active in school, so on and so forth?
Motivation, like I said again, it's a fleeting thing, and motivation comes and goes all the time. Motivation is a feeling. What you have to do is you have to build the habit. You have to build consistency. So how do you motivate your child, right? Sometimes a lot of parents, they use like rewards or punishments. If like you don't do well, I'm gonna punish you. You do well, I'm gonna the reward you, buy you something, go on holiday, these kind of things. But all these things are just like short-term fixes. All these things are like short-term motivation. What you want to instill in your child, right, is you want to change their mindset. Get them to start to think of like, hey, what is it that you want? And why is the reason you want this? And like, how can I support you? How can you actually get them? So it's like problem solving skills. If they want to achieve a certain game, a result, and I always link it to a game. I say, do you play any game? And they say, yeah, they play whatever game they play. And I say, let's say you go to the boss stage. How are you going to defeat the boss? And then they tell me all the strategies, right? All the tactics that they will have. They say, okay, let's change the scenario right now. If the scenario is your math paper, for example, that's the boss stage, right? How do you think you should approach this to slay the boss? Then they will start to like think of things in a different way. So what you want them to do is, instead of just motivation, right? It's like, how can they think of ways to solve whatever challenge or problem that they have? So to the parents who ask like how to motivate my child, first of all, is they need to be they need to be aware that it is a problem. And secondly, they need to want to change. And if they are not in a state yet, or not in a stage yet that they want to change, right? Sometimes it could be it's not painful enough. And why it's not painful enough? It's because every time you come in with a solution. If let's say, for example, they're late for school, they're gonna get detention, let them like face the consequences. Don't try to talk them out of it and all that. Like let them be heard to a point where like they say, okay, I think I need help. And then they come to you for help. But also at the same point, right? Don't let them cross a line of like almost no return lah. Yeah.
All right, it's late, Matt. Thank you so much for answering all the questions. Thank you so much for parents for staying behind till the end. Do join us on Instagram. Our class is almost full. So tomorrow we will send out another message to see if there's still any parents interested, and then that will be the end of it. I think
Yeah,
some of
okay. Tammy, I think like I was seeing the chat, right? Because some of the parents were saying like they need to discuss with their child or need to discuss with their spouse, right? So parents, yes, we do have, I think, probably a few more spots. Tammy and my team will send you another message after you discuss. They'll tell you how many spots are left also. So once you get that message, right, let us know, because once we hit 40, that's the end. Like then you join 2025's class.
yeah. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a good
Yeah.
night.
Thank you
Bye.
so much, guys. Well, lucky my voice still like almost losing my voice. Okay, thank you, guys. Good night. Kamsahamnida. If you've signed up for the workshop, I'll see you and your child in the coming weeks. But otherwise, all the best in your journey with your child, and always believe in them, because it's a journey. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, guys. Take care. Good night.
Recording stopped.